Welcome to the Parenting Puzzle Podcast with Dr. Daniela Owen, the podcast where we attempt to solve the parenting puzzle together.
Hey, everybody. Welcome into another edition of the Parenting Puzzle Podcast with Dr. Daniela Owen. Dr. D, how are you doing today?
I'm wonderful, Jake. How are you?
I'm doing really, really well. Everybody's good and healthy, so I can't complain. It is very rainy today. I got soaked, but outside of that, we're doing great. So I am super pumped about our episode today. We have an amazing lady and friend of the show coming on. Lauren, how are you?
Good. Thank you for having me.
We are so excited to have you on the podcast. I know it takes a little bit of bravery to come on a forum like this. I think even Dr. D and I are still getting used to it from time to time. So thank you for being brave and coming on the podcast. We're so excited for your question. I think it's going to be something that resonates with a lot of parents. And that's what we're here to do. I think it's important sometimes to level set and talk about, hey, what's our why behind doing this podcast? And the why is parenting is super, super hard. I think that could be our catchphrase, Dr. D. Parenting is hard, full stop. We could print the shirts. But it's super hard. And there's no like guidebook to parenting. It's sometimes you feel like you're like a flag flapping in the breeze because you can feel rudderless sometimes. So what we want to do is address some questions that resonates with a large audience of parents that are struggling with similar things. And that's why this topic today I think is amazing. But that's why we do this, is to help parents. Anybody that listens, we want them to take a few tips, a few things that they can implement quickly and make their parenting journey just a little bit better. Just to remind you who I am, everybody knows who Dr. D is. She's like the superstar of the show. My name's Jake. I have two young boys, 8 and 3, and I struggle with everything else everybody else does. Sometimes you feel like you're surviving. Sometimes you're feeling like you're thriving. But I do this podcast because I get the opportunity to learn and be a better parent from my awesome friend over here, Dr. D. So without any further talking from me, because I like to talk, Lauren, I'll turn it over to you. Why don't you just kind of introduce yourself to the audience and kind of let us know a little bit about your parenting journey?
Sure. My name is Lauren. I am a mom of 2 small kids. I have a son who's 4 and a daughter who's 2. My parenting journey has been a roller coaster, I would say. My first baby came during the height of COVID, so that was something to kind of manage and learn how to parent around. But I think it's been just a learning process, as many parents discover. A lot of times we don't know what we're doing. And it's nice to have experts who we can ask questions to.
Let's just make that not plural. Let's just call it one expert. I'm just like you, Lauren. I'm like the person that has no idea what I'm doing half the time. Somebody asked me why.
Yes.
Nice to have one expert. Yes.
Just to be on the journey together is great.
Somebody in my family, like, why do you do this podcast? I was like, why wouldn't I do the podcast? I get to talk to Dr. D. I'd be silly not to do it. So thank you for joining and giving us some insight into your family and kind of what you're going through. I know you came on. You have a question. So without any further talking from me, I'll let you ask your question and let Dr. D answer it.
Let's do it. So for me, social media is everywhere. It's always accessible at your fingertips. And a lot of times there's conflicting parenting trends that I see online, like gentle parenting versus tough love, or helicopter parenting versus free range parenting. And some of those like mommy bloggers that I follow can get in my head a little bit. Is there anything that you would recommend in terms of helping parents distinguish helpful advice versus misinformation? Or are there any like common myths that you see circulate that aren't rooted in actual research?
This is such a great question, Lauren. I'm so glad you're bringing it up because there is so much information out there, and sometimes it does conflict, leaving parents kind of scratching their heads of, well, what am I supposed to do? What is the right answer? So one thing to think about first is just what are your parenting values, right? And see how those align with the different kinds of things that you're seeing or reading. So, trying to fit into someone's parenting recommendations that really don't fit with your values personally or the values that you want to instill within your family, probably not going to work so great for you. So that's a really good place to start. Also, figuring out, what the person's credentials are. Some people are just parents and they're coming on and saying what works for them. And that's not to say that it's not good advice. It's not to say it wouldn't be helpful for you. But there's a really big difference from a parent saying, I'm a mama for, and this is what I've done with all my kids and it works great. You should do it too. And someone who's sharing information based on research in the field of psychology and in parenting. And, there are different levels of research, right? So there's research that's based on randomized controlled trials, which are really, really carefully and well done research studies that are able to provide really clear, concrete outcomes that parents could then use and incorporate versus something that's a little bit more kind of, well, we haven't tested this, but it seems like it's helping, right? And so just kind of looking at who your source is and then doing a little cross-referencing, that's a good tip that I can give you so that you kind of know where your info is coming from. And again, not to say that the Mama 4 doesn't have a great suggestion for your family, but just know that that's where your suggestion is coming from, right? Is this making sense so far?
No, that makes total sense.
And then I think as far as, what information is floating around out there that doesn't fit with the research, there are a few things that I want to just mention because there is really good, strong parenting evidence that these things work. And then there's like kind of a lot of naysaying going on. So giving kids consequences. Consequences are a way that kids learn the boundaries of life, positive consequences and negative consequences. And there is some talk right now of not giving any kids consequences. If your child is a typically developing child, chances are consequences are actually going to work well for them, and warnings about consequences will teach them what they can know about, whether to kind of keep going with what they're doing or stop what they're doing. And it often can stop a problem behavior really quickly. So if your child knows that the consequence is going to happen, and I always encourage parents to give a consequence that they are willing and able to follow through with. If you can't follow through with it or you're not willing to, don't tell your kid you're canceling a vacation if you're not willing to cancel a vacation, right?
Yeah.
Pick something else. But if you're willing and able to, and it's reasonable, like removing a privilege for a few minutes or having them take a break or a timeout, those are ways that kids can discover that, okay, this isn't working. And for a lot of kids, if you do follow through with the consequence, they quickly learn, ooh, I don't want to do that. So when you give a warning, so when you say, I need you to sit up at the table if they're like flopping all over, standing in an unsafe way on their chair, and they don't listen, then you can say, if you don't sit safely in your chair, you're going to have to take a break from the meal, or you're going to lose that cookie that's sitting there for dessert. Then you give them 5 seconds or so to respond, because it takes kids a little time to shift. And then they don't listen. Then you take away the cookie or you give them the short timeout. And there's a lot out there saying, don't do this. This really upsets kids, or putting them in a timeout creates a sense of abandonment. There is no research that shows that an accurately and well done timeout, which should be brief. The kind of rule of thumb is a minute for each year. And sometimes you don't even need to do that long. But this idea that if you put a kid in another room for 40 minutes and they're not allowed to come out, that is not what a timeout is, right? That is overly harsh parenting. That's not what we're talking about when we say timeout. We're saying a quick break from whatever is going on. They're being silly. Their sibling at the table is laughing at them. They're getting a lot of positive feedback for doing the unsafe behavior. You need to
Mhm.
take a little break, reset, and come back. And so that's one of the things that is going on right now that people who have studied parenting the way I have kind of get distressed about, because consequences are helpful. Our world is based on consequences, and
Mhm.
learning the good consequences that encourage you and reinforce you to do the things that you should keep doing, and then the consequences that tell you, stop, or slow down, yellow light, this isn't a place to proceed, can really help a kid shift behavior quickly and not have to lead to a big interaction about it, right? If you start counting and your kid sits down at a second 4, you're done. That's it. And you can go back to having dinner and not have to worry about it. And so these are things that have been recently getting a bad rap, I think,
Mhm.
on social media in some arenas, that I want to encourage you that there is really good, strong parenting research, and all of the parenting psychologists who are putting up newsletters and blogs and things like that are going back to the research and bringing it back up and explaining why this isn't something to just throw out altogether.
Mhm.
That's something.
That's really helpful. Even the warnings of a consequence, like, is very helpful to think about. And I think, like what you say, in terms of like getting away from consequences in the social media world with the gentle parenting, like I think of when we're trying to go out the door in the morning, and like there's a lot about rushing kids can cause them to become anxious. But if you don't rush them, they're not going to get out the door in the time you need. So being able to like give those warnings too could help, I think.
Absolutely. And if they know, right, if they're playing with their car toys, for example, and if you say, if you don't get your shoes on, I'm going to take away your car toys. And then you, as the parent, slowly count. You can count aloud. My kids know that the counting means that the clock has started to respond, but you can count in
Yes.
your head. There's no, right or wrong answer about that. Whatever's going to help you. And the counting also helps you stay calm as a parent, right? Because you know this is coming.
Mhm.
And for most typically developing kids, you take away those cars 1, 2, 3 times, you really don't have to do it again. They get it, and now they know. They might not respond till 4.5 if you're counting to 5. That's okay, though. Think about the difference in 5 seconds and 20 minutes, when you're rushing to get out the door. So really just being able to let them know this is the consequences, this is what's going to happen. And again, if you take away their cars, they get their shoes on, they get back into their car seat or whatever, then you can give them the cars back, right? The idea is not to be punishing and angry. The idea is this isn't working, so we're going to take this away for now. And then when things are working, you can have it back. And that's what good consequences are all about. The
Mhm.
other thing I want to mention, because there's a lot out there also about co-regulation. So in the sense of you're helping a kid calm down and you're staying calm, that's great. But that's what parenting research has been saying all along is we want parents to stay calm and neutral, not get angry, not be yelling, not be showing their kids like I'm angry or mad at you. Just that wasn't the right decision. And so here's going to be the consequence, right? If co-regulation is done in a way where your kid can't calm themselves down without a caregiver, from my standpoint as a parenting focused researcher and clinician, you're not giving them the tools to cope in the world. But
Mhm.
if they are really bereft or besides themselves and they need a little extra guidance from you, whether you start taking some slow, deep breaths and are modeling it for them, or you're kind of rubbing their back a little while they're calming down, that's great. But you really have to be thinking about, if every time your kid gets upset, even if they've done something wrong, so if your 4-year-old hits your 2-year-old and then your 4-year-old gets really upset and you're thinking, okay, so now I need to be helping calm my 4-year-old down, and you're giving a lot of attention to a behavior that you don't want your 4-year-old doing again. Right?
Mhm.
And so really also how to apply these things in a way that helps but doesn't create more of a problem. And that's where I just want to encourage you to keep looking at what your source is. The folks who have done the research or who are drawing on the research will give you a clearer explanation about how to do that and how to do that well. And so just be on the lookout for that kind of advice. And if it's like, you should be spending, every time your child is upset, you should plan to spend 10 minutes hugging them and rocking them, I would be asking yourself if that really works for you and your family, because chances are that's really time consuming. And again, if that child is upset because they did something wrong, and then you just immediately go into giving them a whole bunch of soothing, that's kind of positive feedback for doing a behavior that you don't want them to continue doing. And that's where I think things start to get a little murky with the social media stuff. That makes sense.
It makes sense. And it can get very overwhelming with the amount of things that you see, and like sometimes feeling guilty, like I said, about rushing out the door. What would you recommend, or just your thoughts for parents to not feel so bad about what you're doing as a parent, or like how to not compare yourself to what you see online or even in your real life?
Yes, absolutely. This is the really good addition to your question. And so I would say, I will quote Bluey, who I absolutely love that show. It's really, really good sound parenting and parent-child interactions happening on that show. And there's an episode where they talk about run your own race. And we use that phrase a lot in our family. And it's this idea of everyone's experience is different, and what you're seeing other people show, especially on social media, that's a curated experience of their life. And most of the time you're seeing a lot of the wins and the positives and not necessarily the whole story. And so just being able to remember this isn't the whole story. You know, I had a parent the other day ask me a question about their toddler biting, and I assure you, there was no social media post to the tune of man eater, you know, with this kid talking about, oh, we got to bite her now. Like, it was all the good stuff that's happening, right? And the accomplishments and the milestones. And so realizing that people are not sharing the whole story on social media. And so that's one thing to just constantly kind of ground yourself in. And then also realizing that development is so non-linear, meaning some kids develop at different states. Some kids are kind of developing in a straight line. Most kids are doing leaps and jumps. And so it's going to look different in every kid. And that doesn't mean your kid isn't developing in a healthy way. That doesn't mean your kid isn't developing in a normal, typical way. And so any questions you have around these comparisons, I really encourage you to bring up with your pediatrician whenever you're at appointments, because that person is a professional who sees the whole spectrum, right, and the whole gamut, and they're able to tell you this is within the normal range, this is within the typical range, and kind of help allay parenting fears that, oh no, my kid's behind because they're not doing X, Y, or Z. Your kid might be doing, you know, D, E, and F differently from this other kid, and we're just not seeing it always exactly at the same time and in the same way. So that's one thing I would suggest. And as far as guilt goes, just know there's a lot of like kind of leeway, or like think about it like rubber band. There's like a lot of stretch when it comes to parenting. And so by that, I mean, when you're parenting within the typical range and you're not doing anything harmful to your child, of course, there's a lot of flexibility within that. So there was some research done that looked at giving praise. And we know that giving specific labeled praise is better than just giving general praise. Giving praise about effort is better than giving praise about outcomes. Giving praise about things that your kids are doing and trying and taking chances on is better than just about fixed qualities, like about their appearance or their intelligence, for example. And the research study looked at tons of kids and found that pretty much if you mess up 25% of the time, kids are going to turn out just fine, just as well, right? So like, that's good.
That's reassuring.
1 in 4, right? 1 in 4 times you could kind of do it wrong. So if you're rushing all the time, that's probably a sign that you're kind of experiencing some anxiety and stress, and your kids are going to be seeing that. If that's, 4 out of 4 times, that's something for parents to consider. Oh, wow, I'm hurried, I'm stressed, I'm anxious all the time. My kid's picking up on this. If I'm modeling anxiety, my kid's likely going to be experiencing it too. But if a lot of the time you're, getting out of the house and there might be a little, okay, hurry here, but the general routine has a flow to it and kids are not feeling on edge for 20 minutes while you're trying to get out the door. Every once in a while when you're running late and it's kind of like, hurry, let's go, grab your shoes, come on, we'll put them on the car. It's probably going to be just fine.
Yeah.
Right? So on balance, you have so many interactions with kids throughout the day. And I know this changes as kids get older and more independent, but with little kids, parents are often having so many interactions that if the vast majority are going pretty well, then you don't really have that much to worry about. And the fact that you're concerned and being conscientious is a good sign that you really are caring and you really are doing your best. And so I would just encourage you to kind of, again, go back to those values. And if you're noticing, gosh, we are always rushing out the door, checking in about what's that about, right? Like, do we need to start to wake up a little bit earlier, or do we need to move something? I once had a parent tell me that they just have their kid wear the clothes for school to bed because it's what difference? It's cotton shorts and a t-shirt, and they were getting out the door so much faster and with so much less pressure. And these are these little parenting hacks that you can just try out and realize, this isn't going to make a much difference in terms of, my kids going out in their pajamas, unless you have like a heavy sweater in their sleep, and it makes the morning go easier. So it's worth it in terms of just checking in if things aren't going well for yourself, of like, what's that about? But otherwise, if once in a blue moon you're hurrying, or 25% of the time you're hurrying, there isn't that much to worry about in terms of how the effect is going to be on kids.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I also love the Bluey advice. Who would have thought we would take advice from a cartoon, but we all love Bluey, so.
It's really well done.
I need to step my Bluey game up. I need to watch more Bluey, I think.
Yes.
I need to get my kids on that Bluey beat,
It's amazing, and the music is so good.
The music is good.
I think Dr. D, one of my main takeaways is like, give yourself some grace. One, because you're not going to be perfect. I know that's the case for me. And then two, with the social media thing, what I was thinking about was all these experts online, right? Their family is not the same as Lauren's family or my family or Dr. D's family. We're all different. So like the advice that works for them might not work for your family. It doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. Just means, taking a 10-minute hug after a small consequence might not work for you, right? So everybody's a little bit different, but love the questions. I thought it was fantastic.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for the advice. And I feel like I just had a little therapy session, so feeling great now.
That's kind of what we're going for. Dr. D, are we ready for my favorite segment of the day?
Don't forget our sponsor.
I'll never forget them. So, Lauren, one thing as parents that we look for all the time is ways for our kids to get active, right? So if you are looking, can we see this?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, we're cooking with salt now. But we're always looking for our kids to get active and try new things. So we just want to give a big shout out to our sponsor of the Last Word with Dr. D. So if you're looking for a fun, safe, competitive way to get your kids active, my suggestion would be look no further than Louisiana Flag Football. It's the premier youth flag football league in South Louisiana, where kids can develop skills, maybe make some new friends, and create some unforgettable memories. So if you are interested in signing up, we're about to start our spring season, but you can sign up at louisianaflagfootball.com. And just a personal shout out, we actually won the championship. So yeah, we're awesome. And on to the last word with Dr. D. Let me put this little thing up. I stopped sharing, and now let me go to this. Sorry, Dr. D, I'm getting it. All right, here we go.
Okay, the last word. So Here are a few things that I'd like you to take away from today. The first is that there's a lot of information out there on social media. If you're feeling confused or not sure what to pay attention to, look at the sources and use that to help guide you. If you are looking at information from professionals who are citing research, that is going to hold a lot more credibility than someone who's just saying this worked for us. That's not to say that that advice won't work great for your family, but just know where the information is coming from and realize that what works for one family doesn't work for every family. It's not one size fits all. And to that point, think about your values for yourself and as a parent and for your family, and use those to also help guide you in what advice you're taking. So if someone's making a recommendation that really doesn't fit well with who you are or what you want your kids to learn or how you want them to develop, then that might not be the right recommendation or advice for you. On the other hand, if someone's giving a suggestion that really fits well for you, and especially if there's some research to back this up, then you can know that that's a pretty good parenting tip for you to start to integrate into your own family. Hope that helps. Oh, and one more thing I want to say, which is there's so much information out there on social media and it's people's curated experiences. And so I'm a big fan of taking little breaks or vacations from social media when you're noticing your brain getting kind of like full up or fuzzy from it. Give yourself a little break, an afternoon, 24 hours, limit the times when you're checking to times when you're noticing yourself not getting so upset. And then that can be a really helpful way for you to filter and take in what's useful without getting overwhelmed.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
I really like the advice, Dr. D, on the break. I think that's a good takeaway from me, for sure. So, Lauren, once again, thank you so much for coming. I hope you got something really good out of it. I know I did. This guy did. And I hope our audience got a lot of it too. And I always end the podcast with this. We're here because we're parents that have our own struggles, and we want to get really great science-based information and tips out there. So if you like this podcast, the best way that you can help us reach more people is to like it, subscribe, comment, share it, do all those things, please. So I could convince Dr. D to keep doing this with me. Thanks, everybody. Hope you have a great day. I appreciate it. Thanks, Lauren.
Thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please consider subscribing and leaving us a review. It really helps us out and lets others discover the show.